Welcome everyone to the launch of this pivotal report, Caste-Hate Speech in the Age of Digital Society. Today, we've gathered here to discuss a pressing issue that has profound implications on digital ethics and social equity. This report unveils the deep-seated challenges and the pervasive nature of caste-based hate speech across social media platforms. As we navigate through our observations, through our findings, we aim to shine a light on the digital manifestation of an ancient form of discrimination. And the goal here is not just to present a research, but also to spark a conversation, which can possibly lead to tangible changes in policy and, most importantly, in practice. Joining me today is Ms. Beena Palikal, the General Secretary of National Campaign of Dalit and Human Rights. She's played a very, very important role in giving shape to this research, in throwing ideas and bringing in those ground observations, putting in all her experience that she has spent on the field, on the ground, in the communities. Thank you so much, Beena ma'am. Your guidance to us since we started Dalit Lives Matter has been really important, and we really just can't thank you enough for all the leadership that you have shared with us, the guidance that you've shared with us. So thank you so much, firstly, for joining us for the launch today. But more than that, for being a part of this research report. This wouldn't have been possible without you.
Thank you. Thank you, Annika.
Okay, so we'll start with the first question. And I think in all the research launches, this is the first question that everybody asks, that what prompted the idea of studying the impact of caste-based hate speech in the realm of digital media? And any particular key observation that has stayed with you that you really found striking?
So I think that we all know that caste-based discrimination and, caste is the determinant for everything. So whether it's politics, we'll see more and more of that panning out before elections, whether it's who you're going to marry, in daily family life, so everything that you touch or talk about or not talk about is caste. So caste is central to a lot of things in our country. So one, we cannot deny that. But the second thing is that this kind of what is happening in the offline spaces, we see there's a lot of backlash violence. There is a lot of discrimination in colleges and universities, It's so rampant, and we've been talking about it for years. There's been a lot of studies, a lot of research, Dalit activists, academics, people have been talking about, people have written books and books on it. But now there's this whole new world online, which is the social media world, where suddenly this world is so accessible to people. And let's remember that it's accessible to the same people who are offline as well, right? So that same reflection of what is happening offline, you see online. And suddenly this world also has become so seeped in caste hate, in caste discrimination, and that space somehow is also very, how do you say, it's a breeding ground almost, because somehow people can say what they want and then there's no action taken. In the real life, we can go file an FIR and immediately, but here they think that they can just say whatever and then there's no action taken, and you're behind the screen, nobody knows who you are, and so it's fine to do that. So I think somewhere the what is happening offline may be more tangible, but what is happening online is as heinous or as big a crime as what is happening offline. And so through this study, one of the things that came out is how bad it is and how caste is used to abuse, in not just abuse, like, for example, a lot of women face abuse online, right? As women, we face abuse. But as Dalit women, we face, both abuse plus caste-based abuse. So it's more to not just abuse you, but also break your dignity. And I think that is so important for us to talk about and have a conversation around.
I think that's a very solid beginning to what prompted the report. Ma'am, we studied in the report, and when people will see it, once we'll share it and make it public. In this report, we went through thousands of posts that which were in the form of satires, memes, abuse, in the form of bullying, harassment, and some of them are really really derogatory remarks that still are surfacing across social media, and action hasn't been taken on them despite being reported. So my question to you is, what do you think are the challenges in moderating this sort of content? Caste-based hate speech prevails across social media, and we all know that. We have the examples in front of us. What are the challenges that the social media, the tech platforms are facing in moderating this context?
Yeah, so I think I'm not the one to speak on behalf of the tech platforms, but definitely we have worked along with Social Media Matters. We worked with some tech companies, specifically with Twitter, earlier Twitter, now X. And we found out that there are certain algorithms that, identify some of this caste abuse. And, I remember there was at one time we used to literally sit online and go through Excel sheets and sheets of what this abuse is, and how we can identify it and how the algorithms can identify it. But I think over the years, we have become so advanced technologically. We have AI now, and we have new programs that could identify this abuse. So I'm sure there is a challenge of like if you just say chamar, it's a caste term. But if you say don't behave like a chamar, that is abuse, because you're using it as a caste, because you're using using that to denote something that is casteist. So then how do these algorithms, how do they identify that? So I think there should be a way with the technological advance that we have got, that for tech companies, their community guidelines should, take into account this, especially in this region, because you cannot not talk about caste if you're talking about, discrimination online and hate speech online, because that is one of the, major factors. But I think we cannot let the tech companies go off easily, because they need to really develop systems that identify. And I know that there's a lot of caste abuse that people have filed complaints, but many times the response is that this is not according to our guidelines, within the parameters, or blah, blah, blah. And so we can't, and so they don't remove that post, they don't block that person. So somewhere I think that there is no genuine seriousness about addressing this issue, and I think so one thing is that definitely there is a challenge, if that how do they identify these terms. But I think we've gone beyond that. We have been screaming horse for the last 5 years at least, or 6 years on this. By now, tech companies and on social media platforms should have developed something that is much more advanced to be able to identify caste hate speech, or any kind of discriminatory language that is used specifically based on identity. So I think it's important to pull them up and say, excuse me, but this is so rampant, and through this research and through our going through these different mediums, we found out that it is not one or two posts. It is, and there are people who are regularly doing it, as the same people are doing it. So if the same people are continuously doing it, then we need to call them out. And I think if we can identify that, then I think a tech company can, with all the technology that they claim to have. Yeah.
You're very right. I think what they really miss is the context part of it, and hence the community guidelines and the policies and the transparency reports, transparency policies that they have. They miss the context until the time they do not have context based moderation. They do not go into history, they don't understand the nuances. I think this will continue, and what they really need to do is work with people like you, work with organizations like yours to understand it, and to also understand the implications of it on the users who are on the digital spaces facing that abuse. And that brings me to another question. And ma'am, we've worked on this together for a very long time. I wanted to state that what of caste-based abuse, what are the long-term implications that it leads to on the users, and then also its impact on the society? How do the users deal with this?
So I know of a lot of people who have gone offline. They just couldn't take this abuse, and they have left the platforms. They have felt so. In one way, we are also building a world that is uh, so conducive to abuse and hate. And anybody who's opposing that, it should be the other way around. It should be conducive to language that is acceptable, language that is moderated, so that it doesn't hurt anybody's sentiments, whether based on caste or race or your religious identity, whatever those indicators we could have. So I think it's important that we that in some way we recognize that. So I feel that so in one way we are losing people who probably would like to still continue to be on the medium, would like to continuously express their viewpoint, despite being from. Let us also remember, Arnika, that social media has definitely opened up the space for engagement for people who probably weren't allowed to engage on mainstream media. So in a way, it is a good thing because, we have that space. I see so many younger people from the Dalit community who are able to express themselves, who post, who write blogs, who are excellent writers, and are able to express. And I think that we need to say that upfront, that this space is very important and critical. But that space cannot take away our dignity. That space cannot be used to, to break us down. That space cannot be used as a tool to practice violence, online violence on us. So I think the long-term impacts are really that we lose people who are genuinely interested in, expressing, in putting out their political views. We're also not taking into account that there will always be, diversity in terms of, marginalized communities being able to contribute to the ongoing political discourse. And it's important that we have their views out. So the long-term impact is that so many younger people will go off media because they're so afraid, and and then leading to mental health. So the mental health, because of what is happening on social media, is becoming so common nowadays. And you have people say, no, I can't take this anymore. I have known, Dalit women who have got off because of the caste and gender, the intersectionality of caste and gender. So they, using rape threats, violence, using our physical features, color, to say how ugly we are, or, so in some way, the abuse, gender abuse continues, but this is gender and caste, and that intersectionality of gender and caste. And after some time, you can't take it anymore because it's affecting your mental health. So definitely there'll be an increase of, people who have got mental health issues post, using the media for this. And I feel that also in the long run, we need to make these spaces and platforms safer And we need to have regulations to regulate this kind of content that is creating either hate speech or moderate people who are continuing, because if you look at some of these accounts, this is all they do, they're not providing some great political discourse. So they're not, all they do is putting down somebody or writing about somebody's caste or saying, you're from this caste, so you're not worthy to be here, or, things like you're a reservation candidate, so whatever you say. I think that kind of a content, by now tech companies should know, Agnika. I would have thought like 10 years ago, 20 years ago when they started, maybe they did, but now there is no excuse. So I think we need to curb that. We need to have regulations. We need to moderate that content. And there also has to be, they need to be criminally tried at some point in time, because if you look at the Prevention of Atrocities Act, and very clearly says of abuse, etc. So I think that is also one thing that we need to look at, how legally we can take this forward.
You've already touched upon it legally, and you've ended your answer there. But what are the other gaps that you still feel are there in our legal and policy frameworks that's still allowing such sort of abuse to surface across digital media platforms? And are also is not helping users to take the comment down, to take the post down. Do you think we have enough resources to help the users, to give them more redressal at the moment?
So no, at the moment, I don't think we have anything that is really, that I think that's one thing that we need to tell the companies. No, we need to tell the tech companies that just having a community guideline is not a way to go. What are your clear guidelines on ensuring that this does not happen again? Because these people are the same. It's the same people who are posting this content, and when is it that you're going to say, no, this is not okay, we need to take this down? Because I have seen, these automated messages that comes and this is not within the guidelines, so we are not taking it out, or, it doesn't go against our guidelines. So I think somewhere they need to understand that they cannot continue to do this, Secondly, there has to be some clear guideline also, like, for example, before elections. The reason why we're talking about this is we see that before election, there's a rise in this kind of hate speech online, and how even, for example, the Election Commission can take cognizance of that, and how we can build. See, there are definitely a lot of policies and laws offline, and there's a violence. If somebody says the same thing online, offline, immediately you can, book them under the Prevention of Atrocities Act. You can take them to the police station. You can file an FIR. We need a system online as well that says, okay, this is your first time, this is what you can do. If a second time, we remove you, third time. And I'm sure if you talk to the tech companies, they'll say, yes, that exists. But the fact of the matter is, we know that if that exists somewhere in whatever guidelines that you have, it's not really working, because the same people are perpetrating the same kind of violence online. We've seen that many times. So how do the tech companies take it a little bit more? So there has to be a little bit more robust policy. The other thing I think is also sensitization workshops of who are these people who are moderating this content, Definitely now they have AI, etc. But also sensitization of people who are saying, okay, this is a problem in this context. You cannot say, no, I will follow a standard guideline globally, because, it could be race in North America, it could be caste here, it could be religion somewhere else. So you can't just get away by saying that, we have this global policy and it should one size fits all. So I think the sensitization workshops need, I remember we did a lot of these workshops with Twitter staff globally to try and see, so I think that is also very critical and important.
You've mentioned a very important point, because at the moment I'm also speaking to a lot of content moderators. And as I speak with them about issues, certain sort of, illicit content that surfaces in the digital media spaces, I see a lot of gray zones that are existing in the policies and in the tags that the content moderators have to use. And some of them have told me that, because of these gray zones, even though we know that the content should not exist, but because the contextual part, the contextual empowerment of that whole team is missing, and so we cannot do
Unacceptable.
anything. We cannot do anything about it. So that's, I think, those gray zones are where people, these people who are uh, you know uh, uh, are indulged in trolling and in caste-based abuse. These are the gray zones where they're blooming and they're growing their networks here. My another question to you is that in this report, what are the sort of recommendations, both legal, technical, or preventive measures that the report suggests, which can really help in detecting caste-based hate speech and also removing that sort of content completely on digital spaces, and empowering the users who are using, you rightly said, there are users, there are leaders who are using this space for more conversation. It gives them a platform to talk about stuff. So what sort of preventive measures and recommendations does our report suggest?
So definitely, I think broaden what that scope of what hate speech could be, based on caste. I think broaden that definitely. You can't say that, oh, our algorithms picked up only this, and so it cannot be an excuse anymore. Come on, we've got so many new technology now. So uh, what you mentioned is context. I think it's so important to understand that context in the region that we are in, or any region, because it will certainly help them even with other regions. Like there's the diaspora in the US and North America, they can also use this there. So it's not just, but the context will help them understand how this works. Definitely much more stricter guidelines to ensure that, and these guidelines should be also the responsibility, apart from the fact that, uh, we should be able to put a criminal case if somebody's continuously violating. But the tech companies' responsibility, the accountability has to lie with the tech companies, that they need to ensure that there are these strict guidelines that take into account that, you know, that this is unacceptable. So I think those guidelines should be clearly. I remember that few years ago, caste was not even a word in their policy. Remember? And we worked with Twitter and we got caste in. So those were first steps that we had done years back. Now it's time that, hey, hang on a minute, we've done this, we've put it in your guidelines, we put it in your policy. Now what? You can't stop there. You have to take proactive actions. You have to have very strict rules and regulations and moderation to be able to identify, once identified, to address it, once address it, to take action. I think this is so important, because you can't just address and say, okay, we're blocking it, because that person will come with a different name. We've seen that happen, right? Come with a different name, come with a different abuse. So the action has to be taken. Either they have to be reported or, because it is criminal. It's a criminal act. Let's accept it. And as long as soon as they accept it and they say that, okay, this is the way to go, I think it's we have to call them out to ensure that they have this in place, the strict guideline or policy.
Right. You rightly mentioned the work done to get that word cast in the policy. A lot of work had to be done then, and attempts. And it's my personal observation. I feel that after that, it has stopped. The discourse
Of
certainly
course, yes.
became stagnant, and nothing happened. And that feeling that again and again you have to keep them, preach them, teach them, and tell them the observation, tell them that this cannot just stop. It is an ever evolving mechanism. This is so deep rooted. You have to continuously work on it. I think to put the message across the table is also very tough when it comes to community guidelines and transparency policies and reports, because at times it just don't make sense to, as when we see them in parallel to what's the kind of abuse that still is happening. So what are the community guidelines actually doing? Because we don't see any
Exactly. Yeah.
we don't see any use of them. The discussion, my last question to the discussion is, how do you envision, what are the next steps of this report? How do you envision that we can really implement the recommendations that has come out in this report?
So I think that definitely we need to continuously keep at it, because to get one word inside or one change, it takes, a lot of time, lot of efforts, lot of discussion, how many meetings we must have had, over the years and months. So I think we have to ensure that till we get something, till we ensure that these tech companies, and there's a lot of resource that they can reach out to, need not be just us, but there may be others who are working in this space. They can reach out and they can say, okay, how can we, be helped in identifying or in putting a policy in place? And, that's something that we need to do. So we need to strictly call on companies to take this seriously and to ensure that we have a guideline or a policy in place. Not just a guideline, I think a very serious policy that is, like I said, identifying, addressing it, and taking action. And that should be clearly specified, mentioned, publicized, so that, we are nearing elections, in a few days we will, start voting. And we are going to see more and more of caste abuse online, hate speech online based on caste, work, and descent. This is going to be a common thing. So it is almost of an urgent need for companies to put something in place so that we don't continue to see caste hate speech online becoming more and more rampant before elections. This is some fear that we have, and that's why we've released this report before the election, so that companies can sit up and take note of this. We're always willing to work, to try and see if we can get some of this. We can support in building some of these policies. We can support in building to have some of these mechanisms. I know that Social Media Matters is also into AI now. And, with all this kind of technology, I'm sure that we can, it is possible to build that. So it's important. And we will not stop here. We'll continue to engage. We will continue to advocate for stricter guidelines online so that they can curb caste hate speech, any speech against people of, a certain identity and descent. And we continue to do that till we get some results. I think we have a lot of time in the world that we can do this. So yes, I think it's really critical to ensure that we have safe online spaces to engage, to put out our views, and be able to, be online in the online space.
Well, that's the message. That's the perfect message that you've ended the discussion on. We all agree that this must stop. There has been work done before. It led to a result. We got the word included in the policy. We've also worked with people in policy who understood, the relevance of it, who understood how important it is to work on this issue. So I think we need more people in policy who understand the context, who understand that what sort of impact it is leading to, and how the discourse should not stop after one campaign has ended, after one sort of work or a program has ended. That should not stop, because the mechanisms are ever evolving. The kind of abuses, the kind of slurs that people come up with, the kind of contextual nuances that we have to deal with is something that people in policy, in tech, every stakeholder, including organizations like ours, we all need to bring that up. We all need to address them. For everybody watching this, thank you so much for joining us. A very, very, very heartfelt thank you to Bina ma'am, to you for always guiding, always being the guiding force in this. We can never let you go, because without you, the work in this space just doesn't make any sense to us. So thank you so much to you and all the other organizations also who's been a part of this research report. You can all access the report. The link is there with the caption of this video. We'll be sharing more voices, more people who have worked on this report. We'll be bringing them up in front of the cameras to talk more about it, to talk more about their suggestions, recommendations. And I hope we are able to make a dent, in the framework that we have targeted at. So thank you so much for joining us. And Binadi, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
everything that you do in this space. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.